Yo, what is good, dev guys? It's your boy Kane. Yes, sir. I'm back with another video. In the last video, we went over the quick start guide for meta sounds and how to get that set up and used in our project. And in this video, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the engine and show you guys this feature that's not really covered in Unreal Engine tutorials. And it's listed as intermediate because it's a little bit harder to understand. It's a little bit harder to set up, and it's also a little bit harder to wrap your head around where to use this in your project. And this feature is called Animation Blueprint Linking. And I will do my best to explain what this is, where to use it, and why you would even want to use it in your project. So what is it? Basically, this is a way to kind of override your animation blueprint with another animation blueprint. That's as simple as I can make it. You are overriding the animation playing in your current blueprint with animations that you set up in another blueprint. So let's jump into the editor. I already got my quick start guide project open, and let me walk you guys through how you need to get this set up for this. So first off, delete this character. Next, you want to navigate to your Unreal Engine Epic Launcher, and we want to add this animation starter pack to our project. So you go add the project, you navigate to wherever your project is. I'm gonna show you if you're using Unreal Engine 5.0 EA, there is a little error that pops up saying that this asset is not compatible with version 5.0. Please select the closest alternative version. So all you do is drop down here and select 4.26 and add to project, and everything will work as intended. So with that, you having the assets, now we can get a little bit of organization in here. So I'm gonna go to my dev folder, right click, create a new folder, call this animations. And inside here, we're going to put all of the contents that will be used for this particular tutorial. So the first step is to go to that Anim starter pack, and we want to drag in this character into the play area here. And you see I already have it pre-typed out, but if you don't have it, if you go to the search details with this character selected, you type in possess, and you want to possess player 0. So that means whenever we press play, the first controller will automatically possess this character here. So now we're using this Anim starter pack character. Now we can actually get started. So the first thing we need to do, the first big thing we need to do with the actual linking of the blueprint is create the interface that's going to be basically the midway point between the linked animation blueprint and the animation blueprint that's going to do the linking. So let's right click inside of our animation folder, go to animation, and we need to create an animation layer interface. So I'm going to give this my nomenclature. It doesn't have one already. So ALI for animation layer interface _ example interface. You can do your own prefixes or nomenclatures if you want to. I just like to, I like to create my own. Let's double click into this, open it up, and see what we got here. And if you look at it and you're used to other interfaces inside of Unreal, the blueprint interface looks just like this. Except instead of functions here, we are adding animation layers. And I'm gonna rename this to example layer. If I could type. And this example layer will take an input. It'll take an input pose. And I'll try to explain a little bit better what the input pose actually does when we get to that step. And that reminds me, let me move this bad boy to my other screen. I'm kind of doing this from memory. I need to follow the steps. Okay, so the next step is to actually start implementing this interface. But first we need to create the animation blueprint that we will be linking to our original blueprint. So right click, animation blueprint. And let's make sure we select the skeleton that we're actually using, which is this Anim starter pack UE4 mannequin mesh skeleton, and press OK. We're going to do ABP for animation blueprint, and this is going to be called hit react. So this animation blueprint will store all of our hit reaction logic inside of it. And now we can talk about why you would want to use this feature in your project. So say you have all these states, all these different character states. You have a crouching state, you have a jumping firing state, you have an aiming state for each different weapon. Now, normally what you would do here is you would go to your event graph and you'd have like this monolithic mountain of code tracking all of the different variables that control your states, right? And that's all running on tick all the time as long as this character is inside the level, which is very heavy in my opinion when you can do something like, say, put an entire state in an animation blueprint, and this state will only process whenever it's linked to the original animation blueprint, instead of being processed on tick on every frame. So this makes your states in your animations event driven. You could, in the code, you can say, okay, I want to, based on this input, I want to set this state. So you can do that by saying, based on this input, I want to link this animation state to our original animation blueprint. And we'll do that later on in the step. I'm just trying to explain why you would want to use this, because it's going to save you so much overhead on your animation and your animation processing that your game will run a little bit more optimized. You'll run into less hiccups, less lag spikes, or what they call basically the CPU is getting chokeholded or bottlenecked. Your game FPS is getting bottlenecked by the CPU processing because you got this big monolithic code base inside of one animation blueprint instead of using this feature. So moving on, now that we have this here, let's double click and jump inside of it, and let's set up all the things we need to set up. So we need to go to class settings, and we need to add the interface that we just created. Now this will give us this example layer that we just created inside the interface. And now we're able to pass in a animation asset to this output pose. Now inside the tutorial, it doesn't give you any information about what the output pose is and what it's used for, because it's pretty straightforward. The output pose is just like in another animation graph, the final output pose that'll be rendered when this animation blueprint is linked. So we want to get an animation called hit react, and we're just going to drag in the first one here. Now I know you're thinking like, we're not going to set up a directional hit react, and you could do that, and you could process all that data inside of this animation blueprint separate from your main animation blueprint. That way you only calculate the hit reaction direction or location or rotation once this animation blueprint is linked, and you're not calculating it all the time, even when your character's not getting hit. I hope you guys can see the benefits of this. So let's go back to that hit react in this example layer. And now that we have this output pose set up, we're pretty much done with the hit react animation blueprint. So I'm gonna close it down. We're also done with this interface. So I'm gonna close that down as well. And now we want to come to our original animation blueprint, and we want to also give it the interface. Now let's give it that ALI example interface, and let's navigate to the layer here. And inside of the tutorial, it says here that the input pose from the layer interface can bring in pose data, and it can be used to blend with any logic or other pose data defined within this layer. So say we had another animation blueprint with this same layer, we would blend all of those different output poses together based on what is going on in this layer. And moving on, it wants us to drag this input pose to the output pose for this one here. And basically what it's saying here is that the input pose, in this case, it comes from the linked animation blueprint, which is the one that I closed down, this one right here. This input pose comes from the output pose of this ABP hit react. So that hit reaction that hit reaction asset that we put in the output pose, that will get passed in as the input pose here. And then for this layer, we'll output it for this particular layer on this animation blueprint. So it's kind of like feeding that animation from the linked animation blueprint to this animation blueprint using that interface. It's kind of like funneling that information on over. So we get our input pose from the hit react animation blueprint and we output it for this layer. And now we need to go to our anagraph and we need to go bring in the linked anim layer here. And let's double click it or click on it, and we want to set it to the example layer. In our instance class, we're going to set it to none because we don't want this to be hard set. We want to trigger this whenever we want to inside of code. So I'm going to pass in this in pose here, and I'm going to pass in this out pose here. So what this will do, now that our input pose is coming, I can kind of give you the rundown, right? So we're moving, we're walking, and then all of a sudden, we link our animation blueprint. So it'll take this input pose and it'll blend between this input pose and the input pose coming from the other animation blueprint. I should probably have this open. It'll blend from this pose to, it'll blend from this pose to this pose using this animation linked anim layer here. So basically, we just funneled in the pose that we want to blend to in between our output pose. And whenever this is linked, instead of this getting sent here, this will override and give us that hit reaction animation instead. So now we're going to actually trigger this inside the code. So let's navigate to our Anim starter pack. And let's double click on this USB character. And in here, we want to kind of set up a little test keyboard. Maybe that, yeah, there we go. Keyboard events. So we want to get the H key. Let me see if I can narrow it down. There we go. Keyboard H. And when we press this H key, we want to grab the mesh that has our linked animation blueprint data. And we want to actually link the animation class now. And this is what I meant by we not wanting to set the instant class here as a hard set variable, because we want to do this based on data or based on events. So let's go ahead and say link, if I can spell, link anim class layers right here. And when we press this, this will link the animation class layer that we pass in. And we want to give it the animation class that has our animation layer interface. So that's our ABP hit react. And then when we release, we want to unlink this layer here. So, whoops. Where am I? There I go. So all I did was just browse to it and then pass it in here so I didn't have to drop down. That actually took longer than just dropping down and doing that. So if I save this and I go to press play, now whenever I press my H key, I'll get a little hit react. Now if I'm moving and I hit, you see how it overrides the pose? And that is exactly, it's kind of like playing a montage, but you can also make this additive, and that's something that they explain inside of the tutorial as well. You can make that anim layer class, you can make this linked class additive on top of your already existing animation. Now let's try to get that set up. Okay, so we need a couple nodes to get that set up. So let's go ahead and say we need this layer blend per bone. Let me see. I think it's blend layer or layered blend per bone. And this will allow us to choose a bone that will kind of separate where our animation is playing. So I'm gonna pass this in. Actually, I am going to cache this output here. And if you don't know about caching, this basically stores all the data coming into up until the end of this node and caches it for you to use somewhere else as like an input. And we're going to call this upper body animation. So what we want to do is For our base pose, we want to pass in our animation data here. And for our linked pose or our blend pose, we want to blend this animation in. But we also want to have this input pose going in here as well. So let me, actually what we could do is we can give this the idle pose so that it kind of blends from the idle, which is fine. But if you had like a state where you wanted to blend from the state, you would just pass in another cache. So we can cache this as well. We can cache this as our locomotion cache. And then we could take this cache and we can get and pass it in here. We can pass our locomotion cache into here, and we can pass our locomotion cache into here. And now we're almost there. So I'm gonna move this over here. And let's make a little bit more room here. So now we want to click into this layer blend per bone node here, and we want to set up the layers. So let's add a branch filter. And this will allow us to drop down and give this bad boy a bone. Now we only want the hit react to play from like the hips up. So we can type in, I think the bone name is pelvis here. And we set the blend depth to 1. Now let me double check on this. Let me double check on the skeleton here of that bone name. Yeah, it's called pelvis. That's correct. So back to our animation blueprint. Whoops, that's physics. Where are we? I am lost in the sauce. Here we go. Back to this animation blueprint. We set up our bone here and we set the blend depth to 1. We also want to do a mesh space rotation blend, I believe. We'll change that if that's wrong. So now this will blend this animation over the top of just our upper body bones. So now our legs will keep moving and our upper body will do the hit react if we're moving at the same time. All right, so now let's pass this upper body anim out to our output pose here. And that's what we want to finally play here. And now let's see what this looks like. So if we press play, if we're moving and we do the hit react, it still does that. Okay. So something is set up wrong. The blend weight is 1. That's correct. The bone is pelvis. Maybe we move it up to spine _01. And let's see what happens when we turn off mesh space rotation. Press play here and let's move and do the hit react. And now you see our hit react is only happening on the upper body. So now we can even fine tune that because the issue was with this mesh space rotation blend. It wasn't the bone. So let me set this back to the pelvis so that we could get this hit reaction moving from the upper body. And now we go here, boom, 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 boom. Okay, so it is the bone. Okay, it is the bone. So it has to be from the spine. Yeah, it has to be from the spine because I think the pelvis, the pelvis controls, or the pelvis is the parent to the legs. So I am definitely a fool on that. You guys can see I use AutoRig Pro, so I'm not like the best rigger. So let's do spine 01 like we had it set up. _01. And this blend depth, I forget exactly what this does. I'll have to research this and like maybe leave a comment in the comment section on what the blend depth does. But I think you can raise this up to like 4 and it'll make it more like the higher the value, the stiffer it'll be. Yeah, the higher the value, the stiffer the actual blend would be. So if we set this to maybe, let's see, I think it's integers only, but it's integers only. So we can set this to 1 and that makes it as loose as it possibly could be. So if we hit an H, so we're just taking those hits, we're reacting to them. And Now you can see how this is very functional in our process here inside of our code. You can see where we can actually call this little logic here. As long as you have access to your character, you will always have access to this mesh, and then you can call this link anim layer class, and it'll only run on animation layers or animation classes that have that interface, and it'll go ahead and tell it to, hey, I want to link this animation layer class now. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got for you guys, man. If you like this video, if this video was helpful, leave a like, leave a subscribe for your boy, leave a comment, let me know what's going on. Join my Discord. I always like to talk about this type of stuff. I learn by teaching, I learn by doing. So help me learn, let's help each other learn. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.